He sings better than Elvis. Filipino shocks Simon Cowell on Ireland's Got Talent, in the bustling heart of Dublin, where old stone streets echoed with music and the voices of travelers from every corner of the world. A young Filipino boy named Arvin carried a hope much larger than the suitcase in his hands. He and his mother had arrived in Ireland only a year earlier, searching for a better life after losing nearly everything back home, and their days were painted with quiet struggles that most people around them never saw. Yet despite all the hardships, Arvin kept one thing close to his heart: his voice. It had been his companion during the loneliest nights, his comfort during hunger, his strength in the face of uncertainty, and the one piece of his identity that no struggle could take away. Whenever the cold wind slipped through the cracks of their small apartment, he would sit by the window and sing softly, letting the Irish night carry his notes far beyond the gray rooftops. Everything changed the day he discovered an old Elvis Presley CD. In a second-hand shop, from the first note he heard, he felt a strange connection, as though Elvis himself were teaching him how to turn pain into power. When his mother learned that Ireland's Got Talent auditions were coming to the city, she put a trembling hand on his shoulder and told him that maybe life was finally giving them a chance. Arvin wasn't afraid of singing. He was afraid of disappointing the woman who had sacrificed everything to bring him this far. But when the audition day arrived, he walked into that massive theater not for fame, not for applause, but for her. To show her that her sacrifices meant something. Backstage was chaotic, loud, and overwhelming. Contestants stretched, practiced, whispered prayers, and repeated their routines until the hall shook with the sound of music and nerves. Arvin, with his simple white shirt, worn sneakers and quiet presence, looked out of place among the glittering costumes and polished performers. But inside, he felt strangely calm. A show assistant clipped a microphone onto his shirt and asked his name, and he answered softly. Cameras rolled as he shared his story, speaking with shy honesty about his mother, about his love for Elvis, and about how singing made him feel alive in a world that often felt too heavy. At first, the crew exchanged amused glances. A skinny teenager claiming he could sing Elvis, but the moment he hummed to warm up, heads turned. Even the sound technician paused mid-adjustment. The boy had something electrifying. Through the thin curtain, Arvin could see the judge's table, and when he spotted Simon Cowell sitting among them, his breath caught. Simon, the man, whose judgment could make or break a dream in seconds, was waiting for him. His mother stood off stage, eyes glistening, whispering a prayer under her breath. Then suddenly the stage manager signaled him forward. The curtain rose, the light hit his face, and Arvin stepped out into a world far bigger than anything he had ever known. The audience fell into a low, curious murmur as the small boy walked onto the stage. The judges eyed him with polite interest, none more evaluating than Simon, who leaned forward slightly. Arvin introduced himself in a quiet voice. When Simon asked what he was going to sing, Arvin swallowed and said an Elvis song. A ripple of soft laughter spread through the crowd, not mocking, just doubtful. Elvis was a giant, a voice that even seasoned performers feared attempting. But Arvin didn't flinch when the music slowly faded in. He closed his eyes, allowing the melody to pull him into the emotional place he knew so well, and then he began to sing. The very first note that came out of him silenced the room instantly. It was deep, rich, filled with a maturity and soulfulness. Far beyond his years, it didn't sound like imitation. It didn't sound forced. It sounded like someone who had lived enough pain to understand the truth in every lyric. The judges froze, the audience leaned in. Simon's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. With every passing second, Arvin's voice grew stronger, weaving heartbreak, hope, and raw humanity into each word. People who had come expecting a simple performance now stared with wide eyes, breathless. For those few minutes, the world outside the theater didn't exist. There was only his voice, echoing like a miracle across the room. And when he reached the final line, delivering it with perfect control and trembling emotion, the audience erupted, like a wave crashing against the shore. The applause was deafening. People leapt to their feet, cheering with wild admiration. Arvin stood frozen, overwhelmed, blinking back tears as he tried to process what had just happened. Simon raised a hand, calming the crowd, and the sudden silence felt just as powerful as the applause. He stared at Arvin for a long, heavy moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice carried a softness rarely heard from him. He told Arvin that he had witnessed something extraordinary, something he had not expected from a boy so young. He praised his depth, his emotion, his voice that felt older than time itself. The other judges compared him to some of the greats, saying he wasn't just singing an Elvis song. He was channeling it with a truth and purity none of them saw coming. Backstage, Arvin's mother clasped her hands over her mouth, shaking with silent tears. The audience chanted Arvin's name. Many had tears running down their cheeks. And while Arvin tried to smile through his trembling lips, his heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear the judge's words. Then Simon leaned toward the golden buzzer, and the entire room sensed it. The moment felt suspended in air, and then with a sudden decisive push, Simon brought his hand down. Golden confetti exploded from the ceiling, raining down in sparkling sheets of light. Arvin fell to his knees, unable to contain the flood of emotion inside him. The music swelled behind him as the audience screamed with joy, cheering and clapping and shouting his name like he had just won the entire show. His mother rushed onto the stage, tears streaming, pulling him into her arms, as she whispered in Filipino that he had made her dreams come true, that all their hardships were worth it, that God had finally answered their prayers. Confetti stuck to her hair and his cheeks as they hugged tightly, crying together, while the theater glowed gold around them. Simon walked up the stairs toward Arvin and shook his hand with a rare smile, telling him that he wasn't just talented, he was world-class, a voice that deserved to be heard around the world. Arvin couldn't speak, his heart felt too full. All he could think of were the nights, singing alone in a tiny apartment, wondering if anyone would ever hear him. And now thousands were on their feet celebrating him. When the cameras stopped and the stage slowly emptied, Arvin remained standing there, breathing deeply, staring at the golden confetti scattered across the floor like pieces of a dream made real. The theater, which moments ago overflowed with sound, now settled into quiet. He ran a hand over his face, trying to calm the whirlwind in his chest. For the first time, he truly understood what the golden buzzer meant. It wasn't just a shortcut to the live shows or a symbol of victory. It was confirmation that he belonged here, that his voice mattered, that his story meant something. He thought about all the nights he and his mother shared a small bowl of food, to save money, all the tears she hid when she thought he wasn't looking, all the times he doubted his own worth. Every hardship had led them to this golden moment. He promised himself that night that he would carry the weight of this blessing with honor. Outside the theater, the cold Dublin air felt different, lighter somehow. His mother held his hand tightly as they walked into the night, both still glowing from the event. Fans who had watched the audition came up to congratulate him, some wiping tears from their eyes, telling him he had made them feel something they couldn't explain. Arvin smiled shyly, still not fully believing this was real. He wasn't a star, not yet. But something inside him had shifted. His voice was no longer just a comfort. It was his path, his purpose. He imagined singing on even bigger stages. Imagined sharing his story with kids who felt invisible. Imagined a world where he and his mother would never have to worry about tomorrow again. And as they walked home, he looked up at the night sky and whispered a quiet thank you to Elvis, to Ireland, to his mother, to fate. Because in that moment, under the gentle glow of the streetlights, Arvin realized something he had never dared to believe before. Dreams do not die, they wait. And sometimes when the world finally listens, they rise in gold,